Hello, my name is Lydia Malowski, and today I will be explaining to you how to not only play the 3 different types of minor scales, but also the 2 different types of diminished scales. Now, you may have already encountered a major scale in music, and I'm just going to quickly play a B-flat concert scale to show you just how that sounds in comparison to the minor scales that we're going to learn later in the video. Now there's 3 important scale tones in this scale that make it a major scale or that make it a minor scale. But in this case, it's the 3rd, 6th, and the 7th scale tones, that is, that are raised in the major scale, which means that they're not flatted. So in a B-flat major scale, that means that that the 3rd is a D, not a D flat. That the 6th is a G, not a G flat, and the 7th is an A, not an A flat. But in minor, this is different. These scale tones are either raised or lowered in order to create different types of minor. However, the one thing that all 3 types of minor have in common is that they have a lowered 3rd, and I'm just going to play a quick B-flat concert pentatonic minor scale to show you this. As you can see, that's a minor scale because the 3rd is lowered rather than being major. So in this case, I lowered the D to a D flat in order to create that minor sound. However, what makes the 3 different types of minor is the 6th and the 7th, and whether they are raised or lowered or a combination of the 2. The first type of minor, natural minor, has both of the 6th and the 7th lowered. So that means on the concert B-flat scale that I'm about to play, that the G and the A that we heard previously in the major scale that I played are now going to be lowered to a G flat and an A flat. As you can see, both of those scale tones were lowered, which created a very natural sounding minor. However, there's more than one type of minor. The second type of minor is harmonic minor. In harmonic minor, the 7th is raised, which means that the 7th goes back to being an A natural in a B-flat concert scale. However, the 6th stays lowered, which means that there's technically a minor 3rd of an interval between the 6th and the 7th, even though they're technically only a step apart in terms of scale degrees. So the 6th, just to review quickly, it will be a G flat, whereas the 7th will be an A natural. This creates an interesting sounding tetrachord. A tetrachord is a group of 4 notes together. But basically, the 7th was raised in a harmonic scale in order to create a leading tone, which could be used in the dominant chord built on the 5th of the scale in order to create more of a leading tone into the tonic, which would still be minor. So I'm just going to demonstrate this scale for you. As you can see, it sounds kind of interesting, but some composers felt that this was a little bit too harsh on the ear, hearing that minor 3rd in a place where it wasn't normally heard. So this is where the 3rd type of minor comes in, called melodic minor, where both the 6th and the 7th are raised almost as if it's a major scale, but the 3rd, remember, is still flatted. So you still got that D flat in the scale, which is common throughout all 3 types of minor, but on the way up in the scale, you're going to play the 6th and the 7th raised. So that's a G natural and an A natural. However, on the way down, you play it as natural minor, so you flat the 6th and the 7th again. now that you know how to play all three types of minor, now we're going to move on to diminished scales, which are made using a combination of whole and half steps. There are two different types of diminished scales, whole half and half whole. Both have one trait in common, and that's that they alternate. So if you start on your starting pitch, which in this case I'm going to use a concert E flat, you would either start by moving a half step up from that and then a whole step and then alternating half step, whole step, half step, whole step. Or you could start with a whole step and then a half step and then continue alternating until you reach the octave above or however many octaves you want to play that scale. So starting with a half whole diminished scale on concert E flat, it's important to remember that this scale is made up of two minor tetrachords. Like I mentioned before, a tetrachord is a 4-note grouping. So if you know your minor scales, it'll be easy to learn your diminished scales because you already know the first 4 notes of that minor scale. So the first 4 notes of an E flat minor scale are as follows. So those are actually the first 4 notes also of an E flat diminished scale. But the difference is that once you reach that 4th note, you're going to go up another half step, since remember you're alternating. And then by starting on that note, you're going to play a 4-note minor tetrachord, and then you're going to go up a half step, and then you'll find that you've reached the E flat an octave above. So I'll just demonstrate this for you. So as you can see, when you would think that I would go back up to the 5th in a minor scale, I actually went up a half step from that 4th note, and then I started a whole new minor tetrachord, and then went up a half step again. So that's how it works for a half whole diminished scale, and you can do this for as many octaves as you want, just repeating those 4-note tetrachords. I find it's easier to just remember that you're playing the first 4 notes of a minor scale rather than trying to think about, okay, now I have to play a whole step, now I have to play a half step. It's just easier to remember, especially if you have to play it fast, which you will as a clarinet player. Now moving on to the last type of diminished scale, which is a half whole. Starting on E flat again, you're going to start this time just with a half step, but it's basically the same process. You start on an E flat, and then once you go up a half step to an E, you start that minor tetrachord again, go up a half step, minor tetrachord, and then go up a half step, and then that's your scale. So as you can see, that half step it starts earlier, just at the beginning of the scale, rather than having to go up a half step at the end of the scale. So those are your diminished scales, your minor scales. I know it's a lot to take in, but it's good to just remember the key scale degrees that make the scale what it is, and the rest of it will just come naturally. As a clarinet player, it's really important to be able to know your minor scales and your diminished scales because you will encounter them a lot in music, not just major scales. Clarinet players get a lot of frilly, very fast passages that you're going to have to learn very quickly in order to really master the piece that you're learning. So it's important to get that technique down now, and you'll save yourself a lot of learning in the future. Thank you.